Sham Vishnupat Param Sibarachakachara Shtottara Shatta Svangre Sabhacharana Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sham Vishnupat Param Sibarachakachara Shtottara Shatta Svangre Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantara Chima Bhaktam Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nitya Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 10. Calculation of time from the atom. Chapter 11. Calculation of time from the atom. Text 17. Bhagavan Vedakalasya. Bhagavan Vedakalasya. Gatim Bhagavato Nanu. Gatim Bhagavato Nanu. Vishvam Vichakshate Dhira. Vishvam Vichakshate Dhira. Yogaradena Chakshusha. Yogaradena Chakshusha. Bhagavan Vedakalasya. Gatim Bhagavato Nanu. Vishvam Vichakshate Dhira. Yogaradena Chakshusha. Bhagavan Vedakalasya. Bhagavan Vedakalasya. Gatim Bhagavato Nanu. Vishvam Vichakshate Dhira. Yogaradena Chakshusha. Bhagavan Vedakalasya. Gatim Bhagavato Nanu. Vishvam Vichakshate Dhira. Yogaradena Chakshusha. Bhagavan, O spiritually powerful one, Veda, you know, Kalasya, of the eternal time, Gatim, movement, Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nanu, as a matter of course, Vishvam, the whole universe, Vichakshate, see, Dhira, those who are self-realized, Yogaradena, by dint of mystic vision, Chakshusha, by the eyes. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhacharanda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O spiritually powerful one, you can understand the movements of eternal time, which is the controlling form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because you are a self-realized person, you can see everything by the power of mystic vision. Purport. Those who have reached the highest perfectional stage of mystic power and can see everything in the past, present and future are called Trikalagiyas. Similarly, the devotees of the Lord can see everything clearly that is in the revealed scriptures. The devotees of Lord Sri Krishna can very easily understand the science of Krishna as well as the situation of the material and spiritual creations without difficulty. Devotees do not have to endeavor for any yoga siddhi or perfection in mystic powers. They are competent to understand everything by the grace of the Lord who is sitting in everyone's heart. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahakana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamshcha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chakatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhana Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhyabha Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we are in quite an interesting chapter in Srimad Bhagavatam, which usually we wouldn't think we would read in devotional literatures, which is all about glorifying Krishna and his devotees and instilling devotion to him. This topic, calculation of time, seems quite material, but of course Maitreya Rishi, he does link it to the Supreme Lord, and it's also helps us to understand the greatness of the Lord and how He's in various ways in control of everything and behind everything, and also helps us, like Srimad Prabhu was especially discussing, how to link it as well to modern science. Helps us also understand that in perspective and not get impressed by knowledge of modern science, but also see that in Vedic perspective. So from in this chapter we heard as the name says, calculation from time from the atom. So we heard how it is calculated according to how that time and space correlates, and how when 6 atoms are formed together, then that is called a hexatom, as in a trasareno. And from measuring the time duration needed for the integration of such a trasareno, that's called a truti. And then we heard the different measurements or different scales all the way up to, which Prabhupada in one purport he summarized that also into text 14 and converted it to seconds for better understanding. And then all the way up to the span of a human life, and then from that point onwards, then Maitreya Rishi, we heard yesterday, Vidura inquiring to him about, but then that's us human beings living, we're supposed to live for 100 years of our time, so what about then those in even higher planets? And in that purport to text 14 also, Prabhupada made, even though he gave all those details, or he is giving all those details, he he made the point also that actually, yes, we are doing that too. It's also good to have it, but more important is to know that he's, in one sentence he's writing here, that the subject is summarized by the statement that above all the different branches of knowledge is the supreme control of Kala, the plenary representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, yeah, most important to know about time is that it's also an expression of the Lord's will, inconceivable will, and His control in the material world. And I found interesting in the text before that, in text 13, it is mentioned how it's a brief thing, I'll just read it. So translation is that influential stars, planets, luminaries and atoms all over the universe are rotating in their respective orbits under the direction of the Supreme, represented by eternal Kala. So, explaining that, even the movement of all the planets and stars is also happening by the influence of time. As we also, Prabhupada is quoting the famous Brahma Samhita verse, and in the next purport, Yat Shakshureva Savita Sakala Grahanam, that all those planets, including the sun, that they are rotating by the influence of the Lord. But that's one understanding, but then we also see how, because the Lord, He takes, even though He is the Supreme Controller, He also takes even more pleasure to always give credit to His devotees, and that we see in that case with Dhruva Maharaj, that we know when Dhruva Maharaj initially had this desire to gain a kingdom greater even than his great-grandfather, Lord Brahma. Great-grandfather, Lord Brahma, Swayambhu Manu Uttanapat, yes, great-grandfather, and Dhruva Maharaj. And then the Lord, even though upon seeing the Lord he was completely free of material desires, all he wanted was devotional service to the Lord, but still the Lord reciprocated with him also with the initial desire, and gave him Dhruva or the pole star, as Ganesh Mabu yesterday was mentioning also, that when we see the pole star at night we can even also offer pranam, worship him, because the pole star is a spiritual planet, because that is where Kshirataka Vishnu is residing. It's but it's situated within otherwise surrounded by the material universe in which we are living now. So we see there that he likes to give credit to the devotee, and because, so I didn't explain fully now, because we know the pole star is situated above Svargaloka, and so all the other planets, including Svargaloka, and then of course Bhuvaloka and Bhuloka, where we are, and they're all rotating around the pole star, whereas the pole star is situated right in the center and doesn't move. And so in that way, the Lord is showing that actually you are all under the control, or all under my devotee Maharaj Dhruva. And but then of course still above Dhruva Loka is then where what Vidura was asking about here is then, I think it starts with Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and then Satyaloka. So the top 4 planetary systems, they're above that, and the time calculation is there even much greater, and they are the ones which are not destroyed during the night of Brahma. So they are only destroyed at the end of the end of the universe, when Mahavishnu breathes in again. And then in text 14, it's mentioned about the Samvatsara, because there it said that there are 5 different names for the orbits of the sun, moon, stars, and luminaries in the firmament, and they each have their own Samvatsara. So, I think Prahlad Prabhu was discussing that a bit more elaborately in case of the sun, because that's then in text 15, which we had yesterday, about how the zodiac, how the sun is moving through the zodiac, and And that's whole year is called a Samvatsara. And I just yesterday I read in the 5th canto. It's that's actually what Shukadeva Goswami starts off with, and when describing Vedic cosmology to Parikshit Maharaj, that he starts off with Bhumandala, the planetary system we are in, where we know we have the 7 dvipas, of which we are living in the innermost and the smallest in Jambudvip, and there in Jambudvip again is divided into 9 varshas, of which we are in Bharatvarsha, the southernmost. And of course in the very center there's the Sumeru mountain, upon which we know the sun is explained later then, in later chapters there in 5th canto, is situated in, the sun god is driving on a chariot, and one wheel is situated on the Sumeru mountain in the center, and the other one is situated on the, what are they called, those outermost mountains, forgot. No, there's one. Manasatura mountain, yeah, right. Oh, sorry, the axle is balanced, situated in the middle on Sumeru mountain, yeah, sorry. So yeah, one wheel is outside on this mountain surrounding the whole of Bhumandala, the Manasatura mountains, and the axle is situated in the middle, balancing on Sumeru mountain. So yeah, that's Sumeru mountain, the huge mountain in the middle, which is, and it's interesting, like it's not a mountain as we know them here, which usually peak up with like that, but it's explained actually at the base it's 16,000 yojanas wide, and at the top it's actually double, it's 32,000 yojanas wide, so it's more like a cylinder going like that. And because then on top is also are also residences of the demigods in the middle of Lord Brahma, and then in the 8 directions of the 8 demigods in charge of those 8 directions, the Lokapalas. And that's also where Mother Ganga falls from, coming from, initially, from Vamanadev's, in his pastime, how he pierced through, with his second step, through the covering of the universe, so that the causal ocean was leaking through, and that forms the Mother Ganga, having been touched by the Lord from his toes as Vamanadev as well, and then falling onto Dhruvaloka, who worships in great ecstasy, then to the Saptarishis, who are just below Dhruvaloka, and then down to other heavenly planets, especially the moon planet is mentioned, from where then the demigods take, or rather before them, they bring it to the moon planet in their heavenly aeroplanes. And from there then it falls onto Sumeru mountain, or Mother Ganga. And there she divides into 4 directions of flowing through those 4 of those 8 residences of the demigods there on top of Sumeru mountain. And the southern one is that of Yamaraj, I think Samyamani or something like that, his town, and that branch is called Alakananda, and from there it falls down on Hemakut, one before. Hemakut, Himalaya, or is it those? Yeah, one more mountain, I think, because we are in. So Sumeru mountain is situated in the innermost Varsha, in Ilavrita Varsha, which is precise where Lord Shiva is the main personality there, worshipping Lord Sankarshan. Because in all of those Varshas there's one chief personality heading the worship of one particular deity of the Lord. And so there it's Lord Sankarshan being worshipped by Lord Shiva. And then in south of that is Harivarsh, where Prahlad Maharaj is worshipping Nrsingadev, obviously. And yeah, so there's one mountain, and there's all those Varshas, they're divided by mountains with a height of, I think, 10,000 yojanas. And one yojana is 8 miles, so that's like, I think 128,000 kilometers or something like that. So, yeah, inconceivable height, even this. And then Sumer mountain is even 10 times taller. He's 100,000 yojanas, out of which how many? 84, I think, outside and 16 under below ground. And yeah, so there's Harivarsha and then Kimpurusha Varsha, where Hanuman worships Lord Ramachandra, and then it's Bharatvarsha on the southernmost part, where we are, where Narad Muni heads the worship to Narayana Rishi. And yeah, and Mother Ganga, she flows first being, because Sumer mountain, again, it's surrounded by other mountains as well, but there's a whole like filament is around us, the Kesarachala mountains. They are like because as I explained, the mountain, it's not like that. It's wide at the bottom and thus stable naturally, but rather it's wide at the top than at the bottom. So for stabilizing, there you can imagine many times if there's somewhere a big pillar or like a big flag or something, then you have usually like big steel ropes balancing it, fixed to the ground around it. So similarly, there's those Kesarachala mountains. They're like thin filaments around, also going up with similar height to all the way to the top of Sumer mountain. So Mother Ganga first is reflected by these, coming then on the first mountain, which I forgot. Yeah, which divides Ilavrita from Harivarsha, and then on Hemakot mountain, which divides Harivarsha from Kimpurusha Varsha, and then the original Himalayas. That's what Ganesh Prabhu yesterday mentioned when Ravi Shankar Prabhu was asking. That similarly as with the original Kailas, for example, being beyond the material sky, this is within the material universe, but the original Himalayas, they are there, outside of Bharatvarsha. They are the border between Bharatvarsha and Kimpurusha Varsha, and they are much greater than the Himalayas we have here. In fact, as I said, they are 10,000 yojanas high, so that's like 128,000 kilometers, roughly. I don't remember exactly. And whereas, our Himalayas here, they are around maybe 8 kilometers or something like that. So, and Mother Ganga, she flows from those mountain tops, then eventually coming down only to Bharatvarsha, into the plain, including our planet, also through the Himalayas, but the small Himalayas initially. So, how did I come there? Through the... actually I wanted to talk about the word here, Samvatsara, being mentioned, because I read yesterday, they're in Ketumala Varsha, which is the Varsha, I believe, on the western side of Ilavrita Varsha. There, the chief personality is Lakshmi Devi and Prajapati Samvatsara. So there's a personality called Samvatsara, and he has, it's mentioned, 36,000 sons and daughters. And why this number? Because they are representing or are in charge of one particular day of what's supposedly the human lifespan, which is 100 years. So if you add that up, then that is roughly 36,000 days. And so for each day, for the days, there's the sons are in charge, and for the nights, the daughters are in charge. And so all of them together, and they are worshipping, and the worship is headed obviously by Lakshmi Devi herself. They are worshipping Pradyumna, who is Vishnu Tattva, but he's appearing there in it. It's quite interesting. Prabhupada mentions in a material body, but still acting fully spiritual, and so it's called Cupid. So he's the original Cupid, Pradyumna, because he's the same. Cupid or Pradyumna mentioned who appears then also as the son of Lord Krishna. He's actually his first son of Krishna and Queen Rukmini. So that's where we come across Samvatsara as well. And then yesterday then we had text 15 about the the last verse that Maitreya Rishi spoke at that point to Vidura about how the sun influences the sun, how she enlivens all living entities, something which discussed recently also, how Krishna explains in 15th chapter, for example, how he's the maintainer of us at different levels, at the cosmic level, like that of through the sun, of whom he is obviously the original effulgence, giving the splendor to the sun and the moon, and then at a more personal level also, giving us the fire of digestion and all of that, and it's mentioned there, Maitreya Rishi is saying that, but that the sun enlivens all living entities with his unlimited heat and light. It's interesting, the sun is called he. He diminishes the duration of life of all living entities in order to release them from their illusion of material attachment. So, and this verse very much reminds one of another famous verse in Srimad Bhagavatam of Ayur Harati Vaipumsam, that Ayur, the duration of our lives, they are diminished by the sun. Vaipumsam Udyan Astanchayanasa, by the rising and by the setting of the sun. And so that happens for everyone. But then again, it's mentioned there, but still, Tasyate Yatkshuno Nita, that Rite means except, so except for one, Uttama Shlokavartaya, one who is engaged in glorifying the Supreme Lord. The Prabhupada translates the Uttama Shloka as the all-good personality of Godhead. And as Maitreya Rishi mentions here, so that is also at the same time the mercy of the sun to remove our illusion. Because as we know famously from Maharaj Yudhishthira, that is the great, the most wonderful thing that human beings, even though we see our relatives, our friends, so many, at one point leaving the body, dying, and still somehow or other we think or we kind of feel like that, no, we're not going to die. But the sun is actually giving us this opportunity to see that, and to make us think of question, is that really the place that I'm meant to be, like a world of death, a world of disease, old age. So that's also the mercy of the sun, and and pure devotees obviously they realize that. For example, Maharaj Muchukunda, I said it many times, but because I really like that verse of how when Krishna, as being famous as Ranachura, running away from the battlefield of where Kala Yavana is chasing after him, when he with a huge army, along with Jarasandha, who came for the 18th time, were attacking Dwarka, then Krishna didn't want to bother to fight with Kala Yavana himself, but rather he mocked him by simply running away. But Krishna, he can run simply by walking actually. So he was walking, but so fast that Kala Yavana at this greatest speed he couldn't catch up with him. So, and eventually he led him into a cave where Krishna obviously knew that his devotee Muchukunda was sleeping there since a very long time, because that was the benediction he asked for by the demigods, whom he had pleased very much by his fighting on their behalf, the demons, many times. And so he was sleeping there, and then Krishna arranged that he went into that cave and put his chadar or dhoti or something on top of Muchukunda, so that when Kala Yavana came in, then he thought that is Krishna, he kicked him, and then obviously he got burned to ashes, because that was the benediction Muchukunda had taken, that whoever would disturb him, then he would be burned down to ashes by his clans. And then of course Muchukunda got the darshan of Krishna and offered beautiful prayers. And so one of those prayers is where he mentions about this power of time, and what time does. to our lifespan, and with that to all our designations. So he himself being a great king, he was saying, Puraratya hima parishkritarishcharan matam gajirva naradeva samyita saeva kalena duratya yenate kalevaro vidkrimi basma samyita. That Puraratya hima parishkritarishcharan, that one who is formally drawn on chariots adorned with gold, and or matam gajirva naradeva samyita, or riding on fierce elephants, and known by the name Naradeva, by the name King, who, Naradeva means God in a human form, so because kings are supposed to represent the Supreme Lord. And so such a great personality, what happens to them? Saeva kalena duratya yenate. By your insurmountable power of time, that same person is then kalevaro, so that same person, obviously in the bodily designation, their body, then becomes known as vit krima basma samyita, as either stool, worms, or ashes. Because, that's what happens to the body eventually. That either we get eaten by some vultures or some animals which convert the material into stool, or we get eaten by worms, so we get converted into worms, or we get burnt, as it's the Vedic way, so we become ash. The body becomes ashes. And but of course, then that's the humility of devotees like Muchukunda Maharaj. He feels himself, well, that's my destiny. But obviously, actually, Dasyata Yachkaronita Uttama Shloka Vartaya, that such devotees who are engaged in glorifying the Lord, for them it doesn't really matter. Like Ganesh Guru explained that they are so intensely engaged in devotional service that they actually don't feel it, they don't identify with whatever happens to the body. So like it's mentioned, I forgot the number, but in Bhagavatam I think it's mentioned somewhere, or in some Puranas, how at the time of death, the pain you feel, if you're bodily conscious, is like thousands of, like the beings, how do you say, stung? Yeah, thank you. Stung by thousands of scorpions simultaneously at one time. So, inconceivably painful. But for pure devotees, because they are so absorbed in just trying to please the Lord through their service, for them, they don't even, it's mentioned, they don't even realize that if they're changing the body, if either go back to the spiritual world or even take on another material body. Because the consciousness is not absorbed in the body, it's completely absorbed in the Lord, in pleasing the Lord. So that's the power of pure devotional service. And so pretty much out of time, I'll quickly look at the purport. And then, as I said, Vidura then was asking in text 16 about those other higher planets and their time calculation. And in today's verse, he was glorifying Maitreya Rishi about how he's fully qualified to give him those kind of answers, which are generally, completely beyond our, especially nowadays, beyond our knowledge, even beyond our imagination. And because you're a self-realized person, you can see everything by the power of mystic vision. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that devotees are what's called Trikala Jnans, so they know past, present, and future. And how is it, especially, that they know that? Not necessarily, Vidura is saying here mystic vision, so we would think, well, kind of magically, you can look back in the future, or look into the future, look back into the past. But actually, Prabhupada mentions here especially it is because they are fully conversant with Shastra, and Krishna is giving us all this kind of knowledge. We see that in Bhagavatam itself, that it's mentioned there, for example, about all the different incarnations, including Lord Buddha, who appeared after Bhagavatam was spoken. And also there's predictions about in 12th canto then about the whole nature of Kali Yuga, which was not like that in 5,000 years ago, but now we see it manifesting more and more all the symptoms of Kali Yuga. And in many examples like that, we can see that yes, Shastra, it is revealed scriptures, as it said. It reveals knowledge which is completely beyond our power. And so through knowing the Shastras, we can know past, present and future. And devotees who are pure devotees, who don't concoct anything, but fully take the knowledge as it is given by the Lord, in that way they become Trikalagyas. Also Prabhupada in Bhagavatam, somewhere else, he explains how specifically that is, that even like on a, okay, you can say that's more the cosmic level, but about our own life, that through the Shastras, we can understand that about our past life, pretty much roughly what we would have done to get to that position, that karma. We can understand our present life, and especially then what we are supposed to do and how we can change our life to make it perfect and for a better future. And then we know from predicted of according how we act, how we develop our consciousness, we can understand then what will be our future life, what will be our destination. If we become pure devotees, we will go back to the spiritual world, or according, if we mix devotees, then we might end up in the heavenly planets if we keep on material desires. Or according to the different levels, we can predict our future as well. So even at that level, that holds true. And I think I'll end here today. If there's any questions or comments. Okay. Grantharachima Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.